Battle of Hoth from The Empire Strikes Back pits the relentless might of the Galactic Empire against the fragmented defences of the Rebel Alliance. But what if the defenders were replaced with a modern, Earthborn military force? This video series explores such hypothetical scenarios and takes a fictional or historical battle and replaces one of the belligerents with a contemporary military unit, with a focus on the correlated strategic planning and simulated outcome of the battle. If you're not interested in military strategy, I won't bore you with the details, so you can use the timestamps on screen to skip ahead now. This scenario will see the rebels relieved of their duties in the defense of Hoth, and we will need a suitable replacement who has a fighting chance of defeating the legions of the Empire. In this case, such a unit must be capable of operating in Arctic conditions and defending against armoured assaults, and given that the Battle of Hoth was filmed in Norway, the logical choice for the defenders is the Norwegian Telemark Battalion. As with the last video, the goal is to apply modern military planning, equipment, and tactics to the battle, which I will explain using the following structure. Part 1. Enemy force analysis. Part 2. Friendly force analysis. Part 3. Terrain analysis. Part 4. The battle plan. And Part 5. The battle simulation. Before we begin, here is a recap on the events of the film. Being relentlessly pursued through the galaxy by the Empire, the Rebel Alliance is forced to regroup on the remote ice planet of Hoth. Their concealed outpost, Echo Base, is located by an Imperial probe droid, which prompts Darth Vader to mobilize a landing force to destroy the Rebel base. Covered by an energy shield, the Rebel base is protected from orbital bombardment and aviation, requiring the Empire to launch a ground assault to penetrate the shield and subsequently destroy the base. With the attack imminent, the rebels must fortify their position and delay the Imperial advance so their evacuation transports can flee the planet. Part 1. Enemy Force Analysis. Spearheading the assault on Echo Base is Blizzard Force, an elite armoured unit within the 501st Imperial Legion. Embarked on the Imperial Navy's Death Squadron, Blizzard Force combines infantry with mechanised walkers to create a formidable Arctic warfare unit. The Supreme Commander is Darth Vader, a ruthless general and tactician who places primacy of effort on the mission outcome regardless of the cost to friendly casualties. He is overall tactical commander of the combined space and ground task force. An experienced combat officer from the Imperial Army, General Maximilian Veers, has tactical control of the landing force ground combat element once on the surface of Hoth. The infantry commander is Captain TS 4068, an officer within the 501st Legion. He is responsible for the deployment of dismounted troops during close combat. Blizzard Force consists of 3 heavy mechanized maneuver squadrons. A Squadron, commanded by General Veers, contains 4 walkers, codenamed Blizzard 1 to Blizzard 4 respectively. Each walker is crewed by a commander, pilot, and gunner, with Veers serving as the commander of Blizzard 1. B and C Squadron are identically manned, and each squadron is further augmented by 4 light walkers. These vehicles are crewed by 2 men and are a comparably more agile platform. Each heavy walker carries 40 mounted snowtroopers, specially trained infantry adept at cold weather survival and combat. This brings the manning to 20 crew and 160 dismounts per squadron, for a total strength of 540 personnel across all 3 squadrons, with 12 heavy walkers and 12 light walkers. For the purpose of this scenario, the battle shall focus on the ground combat against Blizzard Force in isolation, and omit the overpowered Imperial assets such as Darth Vader and the orbiting fleet, complete with Executor-class Superstar Destroyer. Assets and weapons. Colossal vehicles that embody the Imperial philosophy of striking fear into their adversaries. The All-Terrain Armoured Transport, or AT-AT, is a quadrupedal mechanized walker standing over 22 meters tall. It is armed with chin-mounted MS-1 Class 2 heavy laser cannons and temple-mounted FF-4 medium repeating blasters. Its height permits line of sight over obstacles and terrain, allowing extreme range direct fire. While heavily armoured, the immense profile presents an easy target for anti-armour weapons, and the design inherently restricts the maximum movement speed. The All-Terrain Scout Transport, or ATST, is a versatile bipedal walker used for reconnaissance, flank security, and close fire support. Standing 9 meters tall, it is armed with chin-mounted MS-4 twin blaster cannons, cheek-mounted 88 India light blaster cannons, and a DW-3 concussion grenade launcher. While faster and more agile than the AT-AT, it is lightly armoured and susceptible to collapse on uneven terrain. An unmanned reconnaissance and exploration vehicle, the Viper probe droid, or Probot, is deployed by a hyperspace pod from orbiting ships. Armed with only a light blaster and self-destruct mechanism, the Probot is designed to feed real-time intelligence to Imperial commanders and confirm the presence of enemy positions. The standard issue weapon to the Imperial infantry, the E-11, is the primary close combat arm of the snowtroopers. Capable of semi- and fully automatic fire, the E-11 has a variable power setting allowing a lethal or stun blast to be fired. When loaded with a plasma cartridge, over 500 rounds or blasts can be fired before reloading. Fitted with a 2x digital sight capable of range finding and interfacing with the helmet heads-up display, the E-11 has a maximum effective range of 300 meters. A heavy direct fire support weapon, The E-Web repeating blaster is a tripod-mounted, crew-served cannon capable of a high rate of fire, making it ideal for suppressing enemy positions. Powered by a Class 4 Tango 3 power generator, it requires a 2-man crew and must be pre-charged prior to use. A computerized fire control system enables accurate fire in low-light conditions, with a maximum effective range of 750 meters. The thermal detonator is the standard grenade carried by dismounted Imperial troops. Capable of both time delay and remote detonation, the thermal detonator differs from conventional earthbound grenades in that it can be deactivated and retrieved for later use. While it produces minimum fragmentation, it can destroy bunkers and fortifications and has a lethal radius of 5 meters. Composed of white plastoid composite worn over an extreme cold weather suit, snowtrooper armor protects against the elements and enables its wearer to conduct prolonged combat operations in austere climates. Featuring a built-in heads-up display and a battery pack powering life support systems, it can deflect or absorb light blaster strikes and energy weapons. It should be noted that the Star Wars universe favors narrative over the hard science of terminal ballistics, and the effectiveness of stormtrooper armor varies depending on the needs of the story. So for the sake of consistency, we will speculate that snowtrooper armor is vulnerable to high-velocity kinetic projectiles, such as rifle fire, however provides some protection against fragmentation and blast damage, albeit only to the areas covered with plastoid plating. Mission. In the film, the primary task of Blizzard Force is to close with and destroy the Rebel shield generator in order to provide air support and follow-on troop lodgement access to the base. However, since we are only wargaming the ground combat, their new mission is simply to eradicate all personnel and facilities within Echo Base. Center of Gravity. In military terms, the center of gravity is the key capability, characteristic, or asset from which a military unit draws its strategic strength or power. In the context of this specific battle, the center of gravity for Blizzard Force are the AT-AT walkers. These allow the Empire to hold firepower overmatch against enemy ground units, breach defensive lines, and transport and deploy infantry onto the objective. Critical capabilities. Having assessed the center of gravity, we must now determine the associated critical capabilities. The AT-AT's primary weapons allow it to destroy enemy vehicles, bunkers, personnel, structures, and even aviation assets. This makes it a versatile platform in terms of its offensive capability and provides a degree of operational independence. The immense height of the firing platform means it can engage enemy at extreme range and fire over or into covered defensive positions. The AT-AT's heavily reinforced armor protects from most forms of direct fire energy and conventional weapons. Heavy armor plating on most of the body and legs allow the walkers to absorb sustained fire without impacting its mobility or lethality. The walking motion of the AT-AT allows it to traverse terrain unsuited for conventional wheeled or tracked vehicles. This allows it to effectively climb steep terrain that is inaccessible to enemy assets and subsequently opens more avenues of approach to mission objectives. The AT-ATs provide commanders with excellent oversight of the battle space, both through their visual line of sight, advanced optics, and suite of communications equipment. This provides crew and dismounts real-time passage of information and feeds direct and instantaneous situation updates to the orbiting fleet. The AT-AT's imposing size and locomotion is intentionally designed to intimidate adversaries of the Empire. In combat, this serves to degrade the morale of enemy forces, potentially breaking the resolve of defenders and causing them to rout. While boasting immense firepower, the AT-AT also provides a capable troop transport platform. Held within the heavily armoured body, the mounted infantry are protected from enemy direct fire and landmines en route to the objective, and are rapidly disembarked from the side hatches using rappel cables. Critical vulnerabilities. The existence of strengths relating to the center of gravity by nature means the presence of contrasting weaknesses. Identifying these can help in the formulation of plans and understand how to best destroy the enemy. While physically able to negotiate rough terrain, the immense size and nature of locomotion hinders the maximum movement and turn speed. This makes the AT-AT slow to reorientate to the sides or rear, leaving them exposed to flanking attacks. Similarly, while boasting a top speed of 60 km per hour, the approach to objective is substantially slower due to the impact on firing accuracy and internal infantry. Although heavily plated and largely invulnerable to blaster fire, the design creates weak spots in the armor that can be effectively neutralized by both energy and conventional projectiles. The cockpit houses the viewport, an external sensor, sighting, and targeting arrays, each vulnerable to direct fire weapons. The articulating neck joint behind the cockpit is another weak point, as well as the lightly armored undercarriage of the body. With the heavy cannons being chin-mounted, the field of fire is inherently constrained by the traverse range of the head. Unlike a conventional tank, this limits fire to only the direction of travel and requires the entire vehicle to reorientate the hull in order to bring firepower to bear in different directions. The hulking size of the AT-AT serves to make it easily detectable from all directions and removes the possibility of a surprise approach or attack. Its height means it can be seen and engaged at extreme range by direct fire weapons, as it cannot benefit from the cover of terrain afforded to smaller vehicles. In canalized spaces like steep valleys or urban environments, groups of AT-ATs are forced to advance in single file. In these situations, a vehicle breakdown or mobility kill can halt the entire formation, and unable to traverse their weapons, leave them utterly defenseless to the flanks and rear. Systemic organizational hubris can cause Imperial commanders to dismiss the capabilities of their adversaries. In combat, this manifests as underestimating the resolve or tactics of the enemy, relying on predictable strategies and complacency in planning. Their expectation of easy victory may blind them to these flaws and creates tactical opportunities for a determined and well-organized enemy. Part 2. Friendly Force Analysis. Having made our assessments about the enemy, we can now do the same to our friendly forces. The defenders are modelled on the Telemark Battalion, a professional and well-trained mechanised infantry unit of the Norwegian Land Forces. Renowned for their Arctic warfare proficiency and combined arms expertise, the Telemark Battalion is a key unit within Norway's sovereign national defence strategy. A highly experienced Norwegian officer versed in Arctic and mechanised warfare, the battalion commander is responsible for executing the unit's operations. Each subunit is commanded by a major or captain with expertise in armoured, reconnaissance, or mechanised infantry operations. These commanders are capable of cross-integrating the skills and capabilities across the differing squadrons. The Telemark Battalion is a highly versatile and well-equipped force, structured in the following order of battle. One squadron is the dedicated armoured subunit and is broken into 3 troops or platoons, each with 4 main battle tanks. One squadron provides the heavy firepower for the battalion and is tasked with spearheading mechanised assaults or augmenting the mission profiles of the other squadrons. 2 Squadron is a reconnaissance and scout unit, employing tracked infantry fighting vehicles or IFVs, snowmobiles, and surveillance sensors such as UAVs. 2 Squadron is primarily a screening force, responsible for collecting intelligence, detecting enemy movements, and conducting delaying actions such as ambushing. 3 and 4 Squadron are identically structured mechanised infantry companies and form the backbone of the battalion's ground combat element. Each squadron contains 3 troops, each equipped with 4 infantry fighting vehicles. These mechanised squadrons are tasked with holding key terrain, providing a blocking force, and conducting offensive and defensive infantry operations. Consisting of mortar, medics, signals, and recovery platoons, Staff and Support Company provides indirect fire support, care of the combat casualty, communications, and vehicle maintenance support to the other companies. S&S Company also holds the unit's armoured engineering vehicles. This brings the total manning to approximately 600 personnel, 12 main battle tanks, and 36 infantry fighting vehicles. Assets and weapons. As a mechanised and vehicle-heavy unit, the Telemark Battalion has access to a broad fleet of weapon systems. Note that this is not an exhaustive list and will focus only on those most relevant to the battle plan. The main battle tank of the armoured squadron, the Leopard 2 A7, is capable of neutralising enemy tanks, fortifications, and infantry from extended range. A highly survivable and mobile platform, it is armed with a 120mm smoothbore main gun with coaxial and flex-mounted 7.62 machine guns for engaging infantry, and has a 4-man crew. The Leopard 2 can fire munitions ranging from heat to armour-piercing, fin-stabilised, discarding sabot rounds, which excel at penetrating enemy armour. With advanced stabilisers, the Leopard is capable of accurately firing while moving, and has a top speed of 70 km per hour. Heavily armoured, the Leopard is protected from autocannon and medium blaster fire, however is vulnerable to anti-tank guided missiles and Imperial heavy or turbo cannon fire. The CV-9030 infantry fighting vehicle is a versatile platform used by the Recce Squadron and mechanised infantry companies. Crewed by 3, it is equipped with a 30mm Bushmaster autocannon and a coaxial 7.62 machine gun. The autocannon delivers rapid, accurate fire effective against light vehicles, structures, and enemy infantry out to 3,000 metres, using a variety of armour-piercing or high-explosive rounds. Capable of transporting up to 8 dismounts, the CV-90 offers protection against small arms, fragmentation, and light blasters. However, it is not capable of withstanding prolonged medium blaster fire and is particularly vulnerable to heavy blaster fire. Note the tow cable for both vehicles is a measly 20 feet long, far too short to wrap around the AT-AT stride, therefore ruling out any cable leg wrapping shenanigans. A dual-purpose armoured engineering and armoured recovery vehicle, the Wisent 2 is built on a Leopard 2 chassis, offering a highly protected platform to the crew. Equipped with an articulating excavator and a frontal dozer blade, the Wisent is capable of shifting 300 cubic meters of earth per hour. A durable snowmobile tuned for Arctic conditions, the twin-seat Polaris Titan is used by reconnaissance and anti-armor teams. It provides excellent mobility in snow and ice conditions and is capable of speeds over 100 kilometers per hour. The standard issue rifle for the Norwegian Armed Forces, capable of semi and fully automatic fire. The HK416 is fed from a 30-round magazine and is well suited to the harsh climatic conditions of Arctic warfare. Firing the M855 round, the HK416 can penetrate stormtrooper armor within its effective range of 300 meters. The battalion has access to light machine guns like the FN Minimi and medium machine guns such as the 7.62mm Mag-58 and MG3. These are used in both mounted and dismounted roles, with medium machine guns able to provide effective fire out to 800 meters from the bipod. The heavy machine gun is the M2 Browning 50 caliber. Used both vehicle and ground tripod mounted, it is capable of defeating light armored vehicles at ranges out to 1800 meters when firing the multi-purpose Raufoss and M140 round. Also used is the HK Grenade Machine Gun, or GMG. Firing the high-velocity 40mm grenade, this automatic grenade launcher is capable of destroying light vehicles and harassing medium vehicles out to 2,000 meters. Precision anti-personnel rifles such as the 7.62mm HK417 and 338 Barrett MRAD are used by the battalion snipers. The Barrett M107A1 50 cal is the issued long-range anti-materiel rifle and is capable of neutralizing light vehicles at distance when firing Raufoss. Both the 338 and 50 caliber rifles can penetrate snowtrooper armor out to extreme ranges, while the HK417 serves more as a medium-range designated marksman platform. A guided fire-and-forget anti-tank weapon capable of top-down attacks on enemy armor. The Javelin provides dismounted troops a powerful and highly mobile anti-tank weapon system. Armed with a tandem heat-charged warhead, the Javelin can destroy most modern armored vehicles, including Imperial AT-ST walkers out to ranges of 2.5 kilometers. However, against AT-ATs, its effectiveness is limited to the vulnerable points. A shoulder-fired recoilless rifle able to support a diverse range of tactical tasks, the Carl Gustav can fire a collection of munitions ranging from smoke, illumination, heat, and HE airburst. While not as powerful as the Javelin against heavily armoured targets, it is able to destroy light and medium armoured vehicles at ranges out to 500 meters. The lightest anti-armor weapon in the infantry arsenal, the M72A6 fires a 66mm rocket capable of defeating light armor and bunkers. A single-use disposable weapon, it has a limited range of 250 meters against armor. With a high angle of fire, the mortar is able to provide close indirect fire support to friendly troops and is most effective against enemy infantry. While not capable of destroying enemy armor, the fragmentation effect serves to harass enemy vehicles and forces crew to close viewports and rely on periscopes or external cameras, reducing their situational awareness. Compact drones such as the Black Hornet and Raven UAS provide native aerial surveillance and reconnaissance to the companies. Used primarily by the Recce Squadron, these systems supplement the information collection plan and provide early warning in detecting enemy approach. All personnel are issued plate carrier body armor systems, providing multi-hit protection from small arms up to 7.62mm ball ammunition. An inner layer of soft armor provides protection against fragmentation and spalling, however is incapable of stopping high-velocity rifle fire. Unlike the snowtrooper armor, the less armored Norwegians are vulnerable to blaster fire to the lower torso, face, and limbs. For the sake of consistency, we shall rule that this armor is capable of protecting its wearer from light blaster fire, however only from strikes to the front and rear ballistic plates. Mission. In the film, the mission of the rebels is to delay the ground force assault long enough to buy time for their fleet to evacuate the planet. Although they take casualties and suffer a tactical loss, they still achieve their objective relatively easily, with transports shown departing the surface long before the arrival of AT-ATs at Echo Base. As I have no doubt the Telemark Battalion could handily achieve the same outcome, we will instead issue the Norwegians the challenge of comprehensively defeating the Imperial ground force. Center of gravity. The center of gravity for the Telemark Battalion is their combined arms structure. This allows them to easily coordinate disparate unit types, conduct highly mobile defense in depth, and rapidly outmaneuver enemy heavy armor. Critical capabilities. The seamless integration of tanks, IFV, infantry, and reconnaissance assets within a single unit provides a versatile force composition. This creates options in tactical planning and allows commanders to creatively react to battlefield friction. The primary armament of the main battle tanks and IFVs are adept at destroying enemy armor at range. These vehicles possess excellent armor penetrating capabilities and can precisely engage point targets at distance. The dismounted infantry also have the capacity to neutralize enemy vehicles at range, with javelins and Carl Gustav AT launchers making them capable of conducting anti-armor target tasks while physically separated from supporting vehicles. While centralized command enables tight coordination, the battalion and its subunits down to the platoon level have the training and equipment necessary to conduct limited independent operations. This means in circumstances where command elements are destroyed or isolated, small teams empowered with a clear task and purpose will have the initiative and discipline to continue executing the mission in the absence of further direction. The Leopard 2 and CV-90 are equipped with specialized winter tracks, providing excellent mobility in Arctic conditions. In these extreme cold weather environments where the ground is frozen, these heavy vehicles can maneuver at maximum speeds, unhindered by wet or boggy terrain. Snowmobiles also give infantry a high-speed and low-profile platform, well suited for anti-tank or flanking missions. Containing an organic ISR squadron, complete with mission-specific vehicles and sensors, provides shared context of the battle situation. This means constant and collective situational awareness on enemy locations, allowing subunits to anticipate likely enemy movements or courses of action. Although limited only to 81mm mortars, indirect fire remains a strategic capability that allows a force to engage enemy from behind cover. The fragmentation and explosives damage of the mortar is excellent at disrupting enemy formations, and when combined with direct fire, can bring dismounted assaults to a halt. Critical vulnerabilities. Although heavily protected in the context of earthbound combat, the Leopard 2 MBT and CV-90 IFV are both susceptible to the heavy blaster fire from the AT-ATs. A direct strike from such firepower is likely to cause an immediate catastrophic kill, rendering the vehicle inoperable and killing the crew members. To remain protected from the superior firepower of the enemy, vehicles and dismounts must utilize the folds of the ground and terrain masking to provide additional cover. Large, open expanses of ground leave vehicles open to targeting by direct fire. While only the heavy blasters can outright destroy the friendly vehicles, the tracks can potentially be immobilized by medium blasters or thermal detonators, leaving the vehicles stationary. In such circumstances, the weapon systems and crew are still in operation. However, a static vehicle makes an easy target for follow-up fire. Like the enemy vehicles, tanks and IFV are forced into single file in confined space. In this terrain, even mobility kills can lead to tactical defeat, as vehicles become roadblocks, preventing both advance and withdrawal. Although the unit is optimized for Arctic warfare, the extreme temperatures of Hoth might place additional strain on equipment and personnel. Infantry will fatigue faster when dismounted, weapons and magazines may freeze and cause malfunctions, vehicle lubricants and coolants thicken and reduce performance, and batteries and digital devices are more prone to failure. The battalion's mechanized core limits available infantry combat power and leaves it outmatched in dismounted battle against technologically superior opponents. The comparatively smaller number of available riflemen leaves meager available reserves, and in turn the ability to reinforce infantry positions. Part 3. Terrain Analysis. Terrain analysis is a planning step used to ascertain tactical advantages and disadvantages for both friendly and enemy forces. Doing so helps us understand the physical operating environment and create matching tactical plans. As the real filming location of Hoth is spread across numerous disconnected sites, the terrain analysis is based on this map from the Star Wars Complete Locations book. To find the area of interest, Echo Base is located within the Claburn mountain range on the planet of Hoth. Concealed within a network of ice caverns, the surrounding terrain features include glaciers, steep valleys, and sparse ice plains. The base consists of the northern primary entrance, the southern secondary entrance, a shuttle landing area, the ion cannon, and the external shields generator. Analyze key terrain features. Observation and fields of fire. The barren ice plains surrounding Echo Base provide excellent long-range observation for defenders, giving early warning out to maximum observable distances. Elevated terrain surrounding the base allows direct fire weapons to be emplaced and engage out to extreme range with no vegetation or obstructions to line of sight. A key consideration for observation are the snowstorms and blizzards, which plague the surface of the planet Hoth. Cover and concealment. Hidden underground, Echo Base provides substantial natural cover from aerial bombardment and ground attack. Bunkers and trenches can be established using the frozen ground, however requires the use of engineering machinery for excavation, denying dismounted infantry the ability to individually dig for cover from fire. Additional cover can be gained from the natural folds in the ground, with the ridges and surrounding peaks large enough to cover and conceal heavy vehicles. Obstacles. Echo Base is located at the end of a shallow valley, with rocky outcroppings limiting the movement of ground vehicles. To the north, the Nev ice flow is a vast and highly exposed stretch of ground, and forces attackers to traverse open terrain under fire. Surrounding the base, snowdrifts and crevasses force attackers to carefully negotiate the terrain, and provides advantage to those familiar with the hazards. Key terrain. The central hangar and shield generator are the most critical elements of Echo Base. The hangar provides a protected logistical and operational hub, allowing vehicles and personnel to refit and rearm, as well as store supplies safely from the elements. The northern entrance forms a natural and fortified choke point, and control over this access point is fundamental to prevent entry to the base. Part 4. The Battle Plan. Having assessed the terrain and identified the enemy and friendly forces, we can now leverage this knowledge to formulate a tactical plan. In this case, the Norwegian defenders will apply a strategy of mobile defense. Unlike a static defense, which relies on holding specific ground, mobile defense seeks to fix enemy in engagement areas and defeat them through a decisive counterattack. Mobile defense is most suitable when defenders hold parity of mobility or greater mobility than the attacking force. The tactical area of operations offers sufficient depth and space to maneuver, the time available for substantial static defensive preparation is limited, and when defenders have sufficient assets to launch a mounted counterattack. For the purpose of a cohesive narrative moving forward, we will assume the Empire are aware their adversaries are not rebels per se, but instead Earthborn humans. With that being said, they view the technology and weapons of the Norwegian battalion as primitive, and still confident in the outcome, elect to press forward with the same ground assault plan as depicted in the film, likely expecting minimal resistance no matter whom the defenders are. Engagement area development. 1. Identify likely enemy avenues of approach. Echo Base is orientated to the north, with the main entrance facing towards the northern ice fields. The south entrance is less accessible to ground approach, blocked by the terrain of the South Ridge. South Ridge also houses the ion cannon and starship staging area. The shield generator is located adjacent to the north entrance, at the base of two parallel valleys which merge into one near the main hangar. This center ridge can canalize attacking forces, however also requires defenders to protect two fronts without mutually supporting arcs. The most likely Imperial landing site is the Karain Valley to the north, which offers a covered approach route to disembark dropships and barges. The ground approach requires scaling either the western or eastern ice flow, steep and icy embankments only traversable by walkers. The eastern option is scattered with crevasses and hazardous for vehicle movement, while the western option is more uniform and is comfortably negotiated by walkers. This leaves attackers little choice but to approach from the north, crossing the open expanse of the Nev ice flow. Determine likely enemy schemes of maneuver. Due to the energy shield, the Karain Valley provides the most viable landing zone for the numerous heavy transports needed to conduct ship-to-objective maneuver. It provides a covered approach for aviation assets and concealment from the Echo Base defenses. After deploying from their transports, the cover of the valley provides a chance to conduct final battle preparation in the assembly area. On departure from their form-up point, they will maneuver up the western ice flow, likely in single file due to the incline. The steepness of this approach will require the walkers to zigzag up the hill, buying further time for defensive preparation. As soon as they crest the flats, the enemy will have line of sight onto base defenses, and with their heavy cannons, can attack by fire well outside the effective range of defenders. When all vehicles have reached the plateau, they will break into assault pattern, adopting a 1-up, 2-back formation by squadrons. Once they enter the valley in vicinity of Echo Base, they will likely split formations, sending one squadron up the easternmost valley towards the shield generator, a second down the west valley towards the main gate, while the third squadron remains in depth to support whichever line of assault encounters resistance. Having breached the outer defensive lines and secured the entry point, infantry can be dismounted and conduct a methodical exploitation of the internal confines of the base. Determine where to kill the enemy. As this plan is based on the principles of mobile defense, we will need to plan control measures for both a fixing force and a striking force. This involves siting targeted areas of interest, engagement areas, and assembly areas for the counterattack. Mobile defense commits all available troops to the defensive battle, leaving few available reserves. It therefore demands a degree of risk tolerance, and uses audacity and surprise to destroy the enemy, as opposed to grinding them down in a static defensive engagement. Targeted area of interest, or TAI Wampa, is placed to confirm the enemy avenue of approach. As a TAI, it need not explicitly involve offensive action, however provides troops assigned to it the opportunity to engage if needed. Engagement Area Tauntaun covers the exposed approach to the valley on the ice flow. It will be serviced by a delaying force, conducting a fighting withdrawal back to the main defensive position. Engagement Area Bantha is the primary kill zone of the operation. This is the selected area where static heavy weapons will be sighted from the main defensive position. The main defensive position, or MDP, is located at the valley opening north of the base entrance. Utilizing both the low ground and high terrain, this is the primary location of the fixing force. This forward location achieves depth from the shield generator and base entrance, and is placed to inhibit the enemy from destroying these structures from long range. Rear of the MDP and closer to the base are the secondary defensive positions. The split valley and separation of the entrance and shield generator demands two separate battle positions in order to protect both assets. To the west and concealed behind the mountain range is the assembly area for the striking force. This is the holding location and departure point for the counter-attack group. Plan and integrate obstacles. Given the locomotion of the AT-ATs, Ditches or berms are unlikely to impede their advance, as excavations would need to be impractically large to prevent walkers from simply stepping over such obstacles. Instead, the engineering vehicles will be used to construct defensive vehicle dugouts on the MDP to lower the profile of the tanks and IFVs. Like the film, infantry trenches and fighting pits will also be dug, providing cover for dismounted personnel manning heavy weapons. While utterly futile against mechs, barbed wire obstacles can be erected within infantry combat distance from the MDP to disrupt dismounted snowtroopers' advance and channel them into pre-sighted lines of machine gun fire. Time permitting, retrograde vehicle positions will also be dug to provide cover at tactical bound to the rear of the front line. Finally, vehicle dugouts and infantry trenches will be developed on the secondary battle positions to the rear. It's likely the defensive positions shown in the film were pre-dug before the arrival of the Imperial fleet, so the priority in this plan is development of the MDP, noting that delaying actions may buy additional time for further improvement of the depth positions. In-place weapon systems. Before in-placing key weapon systems at the static defensive position, the battalion must first be reorganised into the fixing force and the striking force. The fixing force will consist of 2 squadron, 3 squadron, and 4 tanks attached from 1 squadron. The striking force is built around 4 squadron, with the remaining 8 tanks from 1 squadron augmenting their offensive power. Being less mobile, Support Company will form the battalion reserve force, primarily tasked with security of Echo Base to the rear of the battle area. With 1 squadron effectively dissolved, the new groupings can be given independent missions and defensive areas of responsibility. Although part of the fixing force, 2 squadron maintain their reconnaissance role and have a 3-phase operation as part of the overall plan. Phase 1 is a shaping mission, achieved by conducting reconnaissance on the enemy landings, counter-surveillance on enemy recon drones, and servicing TAI Wampa through kinetic action. Phase 2 is a rolling delay, which sees them conduct a fighting withdrawal through EA Tauntaun to draw the enemy into the primary engagement area. This delaying action is risky for 2 squadron, and they will certainly sustain casualties. But without this early harassment of the AT-ATs, Blizzard Force can simply crest the ice flat and immediately bombard the base from distance. Phase 3 is their subsequent occupation of static battle positions and becoming the depth and reserve force for 3 squadron. 3 squadron and their 4 attached MBTs form the bulk of the fixing force and act as a block occupying the main defensive position. Their 12 CV-90s will be positioned to maximise 30mm fire into EA Bantha, along with 120mm cannon fire from the tanks. Heavy weapons positions will be established by dismounts, with 50 cal machine guns and automatic grenade launchers arranged to concentrate fire onto any dismounted snowtroopers in the engagement area. Anti-armour teams armed with Carl Gustavs and javelins will be positioned on the flank positions, providing them oblique arcs onto the sides of enemy armour. 4 squadron and their attached 8 tanks will pre-stage in the MDP, and prior to the battle will move around the mountain range to the west, occupying assembly area Wookiee. Out of sight from the enemy line of advance, they are optimally positioned to launch their counterattack, which once triggered will strike the western flank of EA Bantha. Plan and integrate indirect fires. Although limited to mortars without heavy artillery, an effective indirect fire plan can turn the tides of a defensive battle. Located at Echo Base with the remainder of Support Company, the mortar platoon will establish a dismounted base plate to provide protective fires to the MDP. The first flare is a series of linear targets within EA Bantha. These pre-sighted targets are intended to disrupt the cohesion of the armoured advance and neutralise any snowtroopers who may have disembarked for a ground assault. Moving progressively closer to the front line of the MDP, the nearest zone is a final protective fire, or FPF target, which is triggered by an imminent enemy breakthrough of the position and prompts the mortars to fire at a rapid rate to form a defensive shield of fire. The fallback positions will also have pre-registered mortar targets, allowing fire to be switched rapidly in the event the MDP collapses back to the secondary positions. The battle. The preliminary move of this battle involves forward deploying the Recce Squadron to their screening position. This sees them positioned to surveil the most likely enemy insertion point, covering the east and west ice flow. Simultaneously, 3 Squadron has occupied the MDP, with their 4 attached tanks and infantry manning heavy weapons in the trenches and surrounding high ground. 4 Squadron is postured to the rear of the battle positions, awaiting confirmation of the enemy insertion before deploying to the assembly area. Support Company, including Mortar Platoon, are located at Echo Base, ranged to provide fire support to the engagement areas. After completing their entrenching tasks, the engineering vehicles will also withdraw to the hangars, standing by to conduct vehicle recovery. Using their UAVs, Recce Squadron begins screening the likely enemy landing zones, and also scanning the assembly area for enemy reconnaissance probots. If Viper droids are sighted that could compromise the security of the flanking force, they can be destroyed with mortar fire adjusted by the overhead drones. The battle begins in earnest, with the Imperial landing force breaching the atmosphere and using the terrain to make a covered landing in the Karain Valley. After disembarking Blizzard Force, the dropships depart to the west, with the walkers conducting final battle preparation before departing the insertion point. Opting for the western ice flow, General Veers commences the steep climb in single file, with A Squadron leading and AT-STs providing point and flank security in the steep terrain. At the same time, Recce Squadron can reposture to cover TAI Wampa, while 4 Squadron departs the MDP en route to the assembly area. The climb up the ice flow is slow and treacherous, requiring the Imperials to carefully negotiate the steep terrain, with great risk of collapse to the walkers. This allows plenty of time for Recce Squadron to adopt their battle formation, as well as giving the flanking force the opportunity to hastily move to the assembly area prior to the Imperials cresting the ice plains. As the walkers approach the escarpment, Recce Squadron is arranged in a one-up, one-back extended line formation, ready to engage and withdraw in a leapfrog manner. The snowmobile anti-armor teams are positioned on the flanks, armed with Javelin and Carl Gustavs. On summiting the ice flow, the front of the enemy formation is hit with a sustained burst of 30mm cannon fire, with the clustered formation making easy targets for the CV-90 gunners. 2 AT-STs from A Squadron are immediately destroyed, with concentrated armor-piercing 30mm fire making short work of the smaller walkers' light armor. The lead AT-AT is more fortunate, with its frontal heavy armor protecting it from the barrage, and is able to return a devastating volume of blaster fire, destroying one of the lead CV-90s. Having inflicted the opening blow and also experienced the power of the heavy blasters, the Recce Squadron commander signals the withdrawal, using bounding maneuver to maintain covering fire while vehicles break contact through the baseline. Concealed on the flanks, the anti-tank team sees the opportunity to launch 2 Javelin missiles, destroying one AT-AT with a strike to the neck, with the other being ineffective and bouncing off the heavily armoured torso. The lead walker returns fire, and not at all amused by the loss of his wingman, destroys a CV-90 withdrawing from the skirmish line. Having pushed the defenders back from the crest of the ice flow, General Veers begins arranging the walkers into battle formation, and with more frontal firepower available, begins hammering the withdrawing CV-90s with heavy cannon fire. With the friendly vehicles taking casualties, the anti-armor teams realise their weapons are inconsistent against the heavy walkers, and instead target the flanking AT-STs, destroying 2 with Carl Gustav heat rounds. Quickly learning these smaller vehicles and their troops are carrying lethal firepower, the Imperials immediately target the anti-tank teams, destroying one of the flanking snowmobiles. With the withdrawal in full effect, Recce Squadron continues to bound rearward towards the MDP, keeping the Imperials engaged while drawing them into EA Tauntaun. As more walkers enter the ice flats, Veers begins shaking out into one-up, two-back squadron formation, pushing the AT-STs to the sides to protect the flanks. But with their speed and low profile, the snowmobiles are able to avoid the frontal blasters and destroy 2 more AT-STs with javelin fire. With all vehicles clear of the ice flow, Veers pushes the pace and pursues the fleeing CV-90s across the flats, while continuing to inflict casualties. Having lost nearly half their combat power, the Recce Squadron commander orchestrates a final barrage before breaking for the MDP, and through combined 30mm and massed javelin fire, are able to destroy an additional AT-AT and a flanking AT-ST. Wanting the anti-armor threat eliminated, Veers pushes the AT-STs out from the formation, where they locate and destroy the western anti-armor teams. Having achieved their task of drawing the attackers into the primary engagement area, what's left of the Recce Squadron can break contact and begin re-entering the main defensive position, becoming the depth call signs for 3 Squadron, occupying the rear battle positions. By now, Blizzard Force is closing in on the main defensive position, and the timing to enact the friendly counterattack must be carefully managed. Triggering the striking force too soon risks revealing them early, allowing the walkers to reorientate to their approach. Conversely, commencing the counterattack too late risks the MDP being breached and the collapse of the blocking position. This stage of the battle is where Veers would first encounter the main battle tanks and their heavy 120mm cannons. Realising the threat, he would likely order all squadrons to prioritise the tanks for destruction, and is now faced with the decision of committing to the breakthrough or attempting a withdrawal before becoming decisively engaged. Opting for the former, Veers gives the order to disembark the mounted infantry and commit the Snowtrooper battalion to the ground fight in order to penetrate the defensive lines. The infantry disembarking is a good indication to the Norwegians that the Imperials are committed to the attack, and signals the start of the mortar fire plan. Although the plastoid armour protects many snowtroopers from fragmentation, the sustained mortar fire still creates casualties among the dismounted attackers. More importantly, this also signals the start of the counterattack and triggers 4 Squadron and the striking force to depart assembly area Wookiee to conduct their push into the western flank of the enemy advance. As the striking force approaches, so do the Imperials, and through both machine gun and mortar fire, the snowtroopers advance to the forward line of trenches, supported by the overhead heavy cannons, with both sides sustaining vehicle and infantry casualties. Just as the Imperial infantry commence their breakthrough of the front lines, the striking force arrives from the west and adopts a battle line facing into the exposed flanks of the enemy advance. The battle has by now descended into vicious close combat, with the forward edge of the defensive position seeing trench warfare between the Norwegian and Imperial infantry. Both sides are locked in the dismounted fight, with overhead fire from both Imperial walkers and the defending armoured vehicles. On command, the counter-attack commences, and the striking force begins their attack with 120mm fire from their 8 main battle tanks. With their broad flanks and necks exposed to the MBTs, even the AT-AT armour is no match for the heavy cannons, and C Squadron immediately loses 2 walkers on the opening salvo. Recognising the flanking threat, Veers elects to focus his break-in on the wider and less defended Eastern Valley, and pushes A Squadron forward in an attempt to breach the lines. By doing so, the counter-attack will have less effective arcs of fire and risks engaging their own defensive positions and creating fratricide. This surge causes a collapse of the eastern defensive lines, and despite supporting fire from the mortar FPF, the 3 Squadron CV-90s and infantry begin their withdrawal to their secondary positions. At the same time, Blizzard Force C Squadron commences their counter-ambush drill and reorientates their walkers to face the threat from the counter-attack, and having turned their heavy blasters are able to destroy both CV-90s and Leopard 2s. These walkers reacting to the threat become immediate priority targets, and through the combined weight of 120mm fire and anti-tank weapons from the MDP, these AT-ATs are quickly destroyed, effectively ending the disciplined reaction to the counterattack. With little choice but to continue their assault, the B Squadron walkers attempt a penetration of the Western Valley. However, the cannibalizing terrain forces the vehicles into a tight formation, and their towering presence over the trenches make them easy targets for 30mm cannons, Carl Gustavs, and the nearby tanks from the flanking force. Noting the collapse of the Eastern Valley, the depth positions from the now secure Western Front are ordered to reposition to defend against the Imperial breach. At the same time, the remaining battle tanks from the static positions join the skirmish line of the striking force, and the counterattack races to catch the exposed flanks of Veer's A Squadron before they can penetrate further into the valley. With the position reinforced, the defenders can cease their retrograde movement, and it is critical they once again achieve a tactical block of the Imperial advance to fix them in place for the counterattack force. Having been bolstered by additional tanks, the south edge of the striking force maintains sufficient firepower to engage the final squadron of walkers, with the AT-AT's necks and joints exposed as a result of having committed to the eastern surge. The northern edge of the assault line cannot safely engage the walkers without risk to friendly positions, and instead switches to a cut-off force, targeting any Imperials who elect to retreat. Seeing the encroaching counterattack, Veers orders a final desperate breach of the defensive lines, seeking to overrun the defenders and push into the valley to render the flanking fire ineffective. The battle is ferocious, with the CV-90s opening up from the front and depth positions with rapid fire, targeting the cockpits and sensors of the AT-ATs. On the ground, dismounted infantry are engaged in savage trench combat, with frag grenades and thermal detonators being thrown back and forth as the snowtroopers and Norwegian infantry exchange rifle and blaster fire in close proximity. The flanking tanks let loose with a barrage of cannon fire, and from close distance are easily able to penetrate the thick armour of the walkers' flanks. Realising he has been hopelessly outmanoeuvred, Veers opts to preserve the life of his remaining men, and after ordering a ceasefire, surrenders to the Norwegian ground commander. Or, perhaps fearing a fate worse than death in Vader's retribution, Veers presses the assault in utter desperation, and quickly learns that space Vikings from Norway are no longer burdened by the Geneva Conventions, and the final remnants of the once notorious Blizzard Force are quickly decimated by a devastating volume of combined arms fire. As always, thank you for the gift of your time.